පෑස් චූටි පැක් රුපියල් 37ක වාසියක් දැන් රුපියල් 145යි.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Coming up tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 24th of January 2023. Hopeful, Sri Lanka expects to complete debt restructuring negotiations within the next 6 months, says the central bank governor.
Should be able to finalize all the debt exchange, debt restructuring terms with bilateral and the commercial creditors depending on progress on negotiation and how we can deal with the domestic debt, what kind of treatment we need to imply that.
Expresses confidence of bringing down inflation further.
We are confident that inflation will be single digit by end of this year.
Bipartisan Assistance Committee on Public Finance reiterates their commitment to providing support to IMF reforms for Sri Lanka. To postpone or not, Election Commission holds key meeting with political party representatives on local government elections.
I am for elections but not for local government at this particular point of time.
නෑ ඉතින් ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂින් හැමෝටම උගන්ලා තියෙන එකනේ මේක වියද වැඩි කියලා කියන්නේ.
මැදිහත් කල්යන හැඩයක් අපිට තේරුන්නේ නැහැ. රටකොට දාන්න පුළුවන් එකම නායකත්වයේ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ පමණයි.
Strategic Port. Cabinet greenlights Colombo port transition to a service supply hub under private-public partnership involving Sri Lanka ports and 2 Chinese companies. Summoned. The Human Rights Commission orders past secretary and PUCSL chairman to appear for an inquiry over failure to prevent power cuts during ongoing GCE A-level examination.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivadi Amwata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. We take you to your top story tonight. Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says that he expects to complete the restructuring process for commercial and bilateral lenders in 6 months once the IMF bailout package is unlocked. Addressing an event in Colombo today, the central bank governor said the country's inflation would ease at a faster pace this year, adding that he expects inflation to reach single-digit level by year end. He added that the central bank is aiming to bring down interest rates in line with inflation expectations and that the process would be fast-tracked once the IMF program is unlocked.
Economic Outlook 2023, organised by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, was held in Colombo this morning under the patronage of Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe.
If we did not implement tight monetary policies in terms of tightening monetary conditions and raising interest rates these current levels, we could have ended up the growth negative double digits and we could have ended inflation over 100% or hyperinflation. It is not that central bank monetary policy contract the economy. Central bank monetary policy basically help minimize the damage, both inflation and growth. I would expect the even growth this year will end up contracting about close to 7% compared to 8.7% that IMF predicted and some others had even more negative contraction. Because we see some gradual recovery of the activities as a result of the policies that we implemented so far. The worst is, in my view, is over, and we are seeing some bottoming out of the economy in terms of growth and also in terms of inflation. Disinflation already started. From September onwards, continuously 3 months, we are seeing the disinflation process continuous. So what are the things that we need to achieve in the immediate short term is to get the IMF funding program unlocked so that we get some relief in terms of balance of payment. So once we get that, we'll probably be able to address one part of immediate foreign exchange constraint that we all are experiencing. This is why what is first important part is to unlock some foreign exchange inflows in terms of IMF funding and other supplementary inflows so that we can ease that part and so that there will be a lot more availability in terms of foreign exchange for economic activities to continue under normal circumstances. For that to happen, obviously we all know is financing assurance from bilateral partner is quite crucial. This month we have made a good progress. You all know in public domain, India has already given a clear support in terms of debt restructuring. And we have made good progress in terms of both other bilateral partners, both Paris Club and China. We have a lot of progress made, and it's the process of bilateral creditors giving assurance to the IMF. It's between the creditors and the IMF. That's the first step. India has done that. We hope that other two partners, Paris Club and China also, we have a lot of communication and exchange of letters that most probably will complete soon. So that will certainly unlock the IMF funding arrangement. And the next one is to restore debt sustainability, the ability for the government to meet the service obligations on a relief basis. First, assurance is from the bilateral creditors, so they will ensure they will provide Sri Lanka medium to long-term relief from their side. And then we start negotiating, discussing with private commercial creditors how they can provide this relief. That is only after the IMF program is unlocked. And in the next process is to complete debt restructuring within about another 6 months' time, so that should be able to finalize all the debt exchange, debt restructuring terms with bilateral and the commercial creditors, depending on the progress on negotiation, and how we can deal with the domestic debt, what kind of treatment we need to imply. That is too early for us to discuss all this, because it's a process we will start after we get financing assurance. We are confident that inflation will be single digit by end of this year, because there's a very strong favorable base effect will be kicking from April, May, June, July, September onwards. That will certainly help inflation deceleration path much faster. Our expectation and our prediction certainly will help us to bring down the interest rates also in line with inflation path, and that will be accelerated once we clear the domestic debt restructuring parameters.
The Exim Bank of China recently stated that it was going to provide an extension on the debt service due in 2022 and 2023 as an immediate contingency measure based on Sri Lanka's request. The assurance was given to Sri Lanka via a letter by the Exim Bank of China, which also stated that the bank would like to expedite negotiation process with Sri Lanka regarding medium and long-term debt treatment.
The Export-Import Bank of China has offered Sri Lanka a 2-year moratorium on its debt and said it will support the country's efforts to secure a $2.9 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. India wrote to the IMF earlier this month saying it would commit to supporting Sri Lanka with financing and debt relief, but the island nation also needed the backing of China in order to reach a final agreement with the global lender. According to the letter, the Export-Import Bank of China said it was going to provide an extension on the debt service due in 2022 and 2023 as an immediate contingency measure based on Sri Lanka's request. According to an IMF report released in March last year, at the end of 2020, China Exim Bank had loaned Sri Lanka $2.83 billion, which is 3.5% of the island's debt. The letter by the Exim Bank of China stated that Sri Lanka will not have to repay the principal and interest due of the bank's loan during the 2-year period. Meanwhile, the letter also stated that the Exim Bank would like to expedite the negotiation process with Sri Lanka regarding medium and long-term debt treatment within this window. Calculations by the China-Africa Research Initiative showed that Sri Lanka owed Chinese lenders $7.4 billion, or nearly a fifth of its public external debt, by the end of last year. The letter went on to mention that the bank will support Sri Lanka in its application to the IMF's External Fund Facility to help relieve the liquidity strain.
The chairman of the Committee on Public Finance, Dr. Harsha De Silva, strongly reiterated the committee's commitment to providing bipartisan support to the reforms put forward by the International Monetary Fund to Sri Lanka. Dr. Harsha De Silva said this during a recent meeting of the Committee on Public Finance. During the meeting, the committee queried the severe social implications of such steep mechanisms to adhere to IMF conditions. The central bank responded by confirming that the IMF are wary about the social impact to vulnerable communities and that it has invoked certain safeguards such as expenditure ceilings to negate such effects. When inquired on the adverse effects of market contraction due to stifling interest rates, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe had acknowledged that those measures have been taken to limit growth in order to prevent the need for greater foreign exchange given the dwindling amount currently in the country. They went on to reiterate that with a cash infusion via the extended fund facility from the IMF, interest rates can once again be relaxed and the market will once again have an opportunity to expand. Now, the Cabinet approved the implementation of the first phase of the project of converting the Colombo port into a service supply hub under a private-public partnership between Colombo International Container Terminal Limited, the China Merchant Ports Company Limited and Sri Lanka Ports Authority. Meanwhile, Cabinet greenlighted the signing of an accord with Saudi Arabia to prevent double taxation on income and prevent evasion of taxes at office level.
In order to ensure transparency and efficiency at the Department of Import and Export Control, the government has decided to systematize the department's license issuance process with the participation of regulatory agencies including the Sri Lanka Customs, Excise Department, Department of Motor Traffic, Sri Lanka Board of Investments, National Medicines Regulatory Authority and Sri Lanka Standards Institution. The Export Control and Border Security Program, which operates under the US Embassy in Colombo, has agreed to provide the information technology program StratLink worth $280,000 along with the complete source code to the Department of Import and Export Control as a donation. Accordingly, the Cabinet approved the implementation of an e-license program in the Import and Export Control Department. Meanwhile, one of the primary strategic objectives of the Sri Lanka Port Authority's National Port Master Plan is converting the Colombo port into a service supply hub. Battenberg and Blue service delivery areas belonging to the Colombo South Port have been identified as areas that can be developed under the public-private partnership. The Colombo International Container Terminals Company has submitted a proposal to implement the first phase of the proposed project with an investment of $150 million, which was evaluated by the Cabinet-appointed negotiation committee. Upon consideration of the proposal, the Cabinet approved the implementation of the proposed project as a public-private partnership project between China Merchant Port Company, Colombo International Container Terminal Limited and Sri Lanka Ports Authority based on the recommendations of the Cabinet-appointed negotiation committee. In more developments, the Cabinet green-lighted the revision of the air navigation fees for the international flights flying over the Colombo Flight Information Region with effect from the 1st of February this year. According to the Department of Government Information, air navigation fee relating to the international flights flying over the Colombo Flight Information Region has not been revised since 1985. In the meantime, an agreement has been made for the accord between Sri Lanka and Saudi Arabia to prevent double taxation on the income and prevent evasion of taxes at officer level. The Attorney General has confirmed that the accord has been completed, while the Minister of Foreign Affairs has agreed to sign the relevant accord. The Cabinet then approved the inking of the accord at the diplomatic level.
Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Ali Sabri, who is currently on a diplomatic visit to Saudi Arabia, says Sri Lanka is seeking to boost relations with the Saudi Arabia through connectivity, investment and employment opportunities. In an exclusive interview to Arab News, the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister said he hoped that Sri Lanka and Saudi relations can further strengthen, adding that it can be a catalyst to a wider, better relationship with the Islamic world.
This is an invitation which I got from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Saudi Arabia. So the purpose is to strengthen the bilateral relationship through Saudi Arabia and with the OIC here and also with the Middle East and the Islamic world. So that will be mutually beneficial for Sri Lanka as well as to the partnering countries. The focus is Sri Lanka-Saudi bilateral relationship in terms of more connectivity. Saudi are resuming operation to Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan airline flight to Jeddah, more trade between both countries and investment opportunities in Sri Lanka for Saudi and its businesses, particularly in the renewable energy consumption, petroleum. Traditionally, we have been allies in both the regional and multilateral areas. A large number of Sri Lankan expatriates are working there. He is a very influential member of the international community, particularly the Islamic world. And Saudi Arabia is also looking for investment opportunity, probably outside. So, number of reasons for us to talk to them and engage them.
Now, on recent political developments, representatives of various political parties met with the Election Commission to discuss a host of important matters pertaining to the upcoming local government election, including the regulation of campaign finances. Representatives of political parties spoke to the media subsequent to this meeting.
The Election Commission convened a meeting earlier today with the representatives of all political parties and independent groups contesting in the upcoming local government election. This was the first meeting between the political party representatives and the Commission after the local government election was declared. During the meeting, political parties and independent groups were briefed at length on the process of the local government election.
Campaign financing and සියලුම දේශපාලන පක්ෂවල
Secretaries of all parties agreed on the new rules pertaining to campaign financing. 15 rupees can be spent per voter as per the rules. That amount will be multiplied by the number of voters to calculate the total amount a candidate can spend for the election. 60% of that amount can be spent by political parties. Approximately between 7 rupees and 50 cents to 8 rupees can be spent per person by the parties. There was no indication that the election will be delayed.
Meanwhile, responding to a question on whether the UNP intends to compete at the upcoming local government election, General Secretary of the party, Palitha Rangabandara, made the following remarks. We have handed over nominations because we intend to compete. The challenge is to save the country. The only leader who can take up that challenge is President Ranil Wickremesinghe. People should decide to hand over the country to someone who can take up that challenge. In some areas, we intend to collaborate with not just the SLPP, but with anyone who supports the government.
As the government tries to delay the election using various means, we are happy that the Election Commission is taking the right decisions and treading in the right path. We definitely have to have the elections and we will not let the government delay it. We were able to come this far because we fought side by side with the Election Commission despite the government trying their best to delay the election. We will keep fighting further.
My opinion of the elections, I've made it very clear. If we have to go for elections, we'll have to go for elections. But the reality of the matter is, spending 16 billion rupees for election is not going to change the regime, nor is it going to improve the economy. So it's something that we have to look at this from a practical point of view. I am for elections, but not for local government at this particular point of time.
Responding to the remarks made by Minister Jeevan Thondaman, member of the Freedom People's Congress Nalaka Godeheva made the following remarks.
All government parliamentarians have been trained to say that the election is too expensive. Calculate the per capita expenditure of the election to understand. Divide it by 16 million then. It will be only 0.17% of the total expenditure of the state.
Details of the summoning of PAL Secretary and PUCSL Chairman to the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka coming up on the other side of this break. To stay with us.
It's hard to keep up with the new when you're listening to the same old Slim Bread Week. A week for professionals.
Welcome back to the news. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka has summoned the PAL Secretary and the Chairman of Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka for an inquiry as to why they failed to prevent power cuts during the ongoing 2022 GCE Advanced Level examination. Now, the inquiry is scheduled to take place at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow at the HRCSL premises. Although the pair were notified of the relevant inquiry yesterday, the HRCSL raised concerns over the fact that neither party had yet responded. New members for several independent commissions, including the Election Commission, are expected to be appointed by the Constitutional Council tomorrow. According to reports, new members will be appointed to the Election Commission, Delimitation Commission, National Police Commission, Audit Service Commission, Human Rights Commission, National Procurement Commission, Finance Commission and Bribery Commission after the Constitutional Council gives the go-ahead to recommendations made by the President for the positions of chairpersons and members of several independent commissions. Meanwhile, tomorrow's meeting will also focus on appointing a representative of other opposition parties as the 10th council member. In other news, the Ministry of Health today received walk-in cold rooms and nutrition supplies procured by UNICEF and funded by the government of Japan.
The cold chain items handed over today were 13 walk-in cold rooms, which are large-scale refrigerators capable of safely holding stocks of highly temperature-sensitive vaccines. The items were installed in Colombo and at regional medical supply divisions in Gampaha, Kalutara, Galle, Kandy, Galle, Anuradhapura, Ratnapura and Badula districts. This latest batch of equipment is part of a total contribution of $3 million for several cold chain equipment, including portable vaccine carriers and temperature monitors that were already provided to the Ministry of Health in 2021. In addition, nutrition supplies were also handed over. The supplies were a part of a recent contribution of $500,000 to procure micronutrients urgently needed for the care of children.
Taking you to the Colombo Stock Exchange, the main all-share price index closed in red as a result of price losses in counters such as Valuable One, Haley's and Expo Lanka Holdings, with turnover crossing 1.4 billion rupees. A similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL20. Foreign participation in the market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. Capital goods sector was the top contributor to market turnover, although the sector index lost 1.14%. Food, beverage and tobacco sector was the second highest contributor to market turnover, as the sector index decreased by 0.19%. Here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies of the world during the day. Crude oil prices edged higher in Asian trade amid hopes of a fuel demand recovery from top importer China, although Congress and concerns about a slowdown in the US economy capped gains. Meanwhile, the dollar's tumble today made dollar-denominated products, including oil, cheaper for buyers using other currencies worldwide.
Brent crude was down 7 cents to $88.02 per barrel after rising to a session high of $88.36. US West Texas Intermediate crude rose 5 cents to $81.67 after climbing to $81.88 earlier in the session. Commodities such as crude oil, refined petroleum products, LNG and soybeans are set to benefit from a rebound in China's demand. Crude oil prices in physical markets have started the year with a rally as China, no longer held back by pandemic controls, has shown signs of more buying, and as traders have worried that sanctions on Russia could tighten supply. The dollar hovered near a 9-month low to the euro, making dollar-denominated commodities, including oil, cheaper for buyers using other currencies. Investors have piled back into petroleum futures and options at the fastest rate for more than 2 years, as concerns about a global business cycle downturn have eased, although flash PMI data is expected to show a contraction. On the inventory side, US stocks of crude oil and gasoline were expected to have risen last week, while the distillate stocks were seen lower.
Still in international business, the dollar hovered near a 9-month low to the euro and gave back recent gains against the yen as traders weighed on risks of a US recession and the path for Federal Reserve policy. The dollar also sank against other major currencies, including the yen, the sterling and the Australian dollar.
The US dollar index, which measures the greenback against a basket of 6 peers including the euro and the yen, slipped 0.12% to 101.89, heading back towards the 7.5-month low of 101.51 reached last week. The euro added 0.08% to $1.08, taking it closer to yesterday's peak of $1.09, the strongest since April. Meanwhile, Europe's single currency has been buoyed by comments from European Central Bank officials pointing to further aggressive policy tightening. The latest was ECB President Christine Lagarde, who yesterday reiterated that the central bank will keep raising interest rates quickly to slow inflation, which remains far too high. Elsewhere, the dollar sank 0.41% to 130.11 yen, retreating after 2 sessions of strong gains. Last week, the dollar fell as low as 127.215 yen, its weakest since May, before the Bank of Japan policy review, as investors bet the Bank of Japan would begin to end its stimulus program. The Bank of Japan, however, left policy unchanged, giving the dollar some respite. Meanwhile, sterling was last trading at $1.23, up 0.12% on the day. The Australian dollar rose 0.18% to 70 cents and the New Zealand dollar advanced 0.27% to 65 cents.
Well, before we wrap up, salaries of all executive and non-executive level government employees will be paid as customary tomorrow, assures State Minister of Finance Ranjit Simbalapitia. And we leave you with that. Thank you for watching. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.